Hello Cinnamon Buns! It's been a little bit of a while, again. Since we're coming to the end of January, this video is probably a little bit late by now. But I read some really good books in 2016 and I wanted to speak about them with you, so I'm doing it anyway. I didn't keep track of all the books I read in 2016, but I definitely read more than I have in previous years. Because reading books is really important if you're a writer, and I'm coming to, the more I do it, the more I'm like, wow, this is really helpful. So I was making a conscious effort to read more, and I did. And because of that, I read some really cool stuff. So let's just dig right in. And the first one is Saga. And this is a graphic novel. It's the only graphic novel on this list. So it's not prose, as you can see. It's illustrated beautifully, by the way. It's a really wacky, sort of perverse, but kind of heartwarming to sort of family-based space opera. I love things that are in space, so what was there not to love? But it's really funny and witty, and the characters are brilliant, and it's just a really, really good read. This is the first volume of it. You can buy the individual issues, and the second one apparently is coming out, I think, in 2017, because obviously there's a lot of issues collected in that. But I absolutely recommend that you pick up some of Saga if you've not read it before. The second one on my list is Zero History. So I've already mentioned this in other videos, I think in the author tag and things like that. I also got this for Christmas last year. This is actually the third book in William Gibson's Blue Ant trilogy, and oh my god, if you are a writer, you need to read this. You should start with the other two, which are up there. So it starts with Pattern Recognition, and then you move on to Spook Country, and then you get on to Zero History. And the prose is just incredible. Even if the story wasn't good, I would still be there for the prose, and I'm all about stories, so that's high praise. Kind of fast paced, but kind of slow as well. A lot of the time you're it feels like nothing is happening, but I'm still so interested and I don't understand why. But basically it's a kind of modern thriller series all about the kind of cutting edge of culture, sometimes technology. A lot of it is about fashion, which I never thought I could read a thriller about fashion and be like, this is one of my favourite books ever. So next I'm going to do the one that I don't have here. It's the only one on my list that I don't have a physical copy of, because otherwise I'm going to forget, and that is Sophia Can Is Not Obliged. So I got this book from the library and just kind of picked it up. I hadn't heard anything about it. I just wanted something a bit more light, maybe a bit funny, kind of rom-com, and it follows Sophia Can, who is a publicist, a book publicist. She is recently single after a bit of a interesting breakup with a potential suitor. And so she decides to do this book about Muslim dating, and she does speed dating and online dating, and the book's just kind of about her exploits and her trials and tribulations, and it's really funny and really just nice and heartwarming and good characters. And Glasgow has a huge Muslim population, and there were still so much things that I just didn't know, so it was really interesting to get kind of insight into Muslim culture, and especially that kind of cultural divide, second generation Muslims living in the UK when their parents moved from somewhere else. The Princess Diaries is one of my favourite series of all time, and I especially loved it as a teenager, and it kind of brought that vibe to me of just really nailing those kind of embarrassing things that you think about yourself that you don't really ever speak about. And it turns out to start a series as well, so I'm really excited for the next one because I had a great time. So the next book I'm going to speak about, which you've probably already heard of because it's kind of massive, is Ready Player One. This is just a really great action sci-fi book. I don't know how else to describe it. It's super commercial, I guess, in the sense that I would compare it to big Hollywood movies. It's a really kind of classic, heroic action sci-fi adventure, but just everything about it works. It's well paced, the characters are good, the whole concept is really interesting. So the idea is that Wade, in this dystopian future, lives a very poor existence and spends a lot of his time in the Oasis, which is this kind of virtual reality merging the internet with video games, and the creator of it has passed away and left his fortune inside an Easter egg inside the game, the Oasis, the Matrix. Wade is a treasure hunter looking for it, and that's it. It's a really simple concept, and it's really, really well executed. It's a great read. Even though it's super commercial, the themes are all still there, really interesting, and I definitely recommend it. The next book I read is The Bees, and this is from the point of view of a bee. I'm not joking. The main character is a bee called Flora717, and we follow her from when she was born as she makes her way through her life and the hive and navigating all the strange sort of societal structures that bees have. She works as a sanitation worker, taking out dead bees' bodies from the hive, and then she is a forager, so she goes out and collects pollen for them, and all sorts of really exciting, dramatic things happen to the bees. Something people often say about books is that they draw us into other worlds. A lot of books don't actually do that. This one genuinely does. It's also super accurate biologically, so the way bees communicate through pheromones is really interesting. So you get this fantastic kind of heroic story, really, but you also get all of this like really rich, interesting zoological info in there as well. So if you haven't picked this up, it might change your life. The first time I saw a bee after I finished this book, like I just had to stare at it for like minutes and be like, I feel like I understand you now, you know? I just like, my heart went out to its little heart. It's really good. The next book is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I don't tend to pick up super popular phenomenon kind of books, but this is actually probably the best YA I've ever read. So good. So good. It follows a crew of thugs, thieves, con artists, all teens, as they attempt to break in and perform the biggest heist of their careers. It's a heist story, but it's in a fantasy setting. This book just has a cast of really fantastic, well fleshed out characters who undergo these huge changes and fantastic arcs. You know, like a lot of them have really dark backstories. Even though this is another really pacey, sort of action-packed read, it's full of really interesting themes. It's dealing a lot with greed and money and crime, but also really what money means to people. You know, like money can be so many different things. For some people it's freedom, for some people it's safety, and for some people it's survival. Well, for everyone to some extent it's survival. This book did really interesting things with that in a fantasy setting which is full of cool magic powers, and it's just really great. The next book I have is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This hits all of my sweet spots, like all of the stuff that I love. I love space opera and I love spaceship stories, ragtag crews on ships, getting to know each other, and this has all of that. It's got really interesting interstellar politics, really interesting alien races and cultures, and great characters. Just a great ship full of characters on this long journey to build a wormhole, which is meant to be, you know, kind of like a new highway for this tenuous alliance between the galactic community and kind of strange reclusive race which lives near the galactic core. This is also the first in a series. I'm really excited about the second one. It's already out in hardback, but I'm waiting for paperback, but I might end up getting an ebook because I'm so desperate to read it. I don't read a lot of sci-fi space opera, really. I tend to watch more movies and TV and things like that, and this is exactly what I want from a spaceship book. So yes, thank you, Becky Chambers. So the last book I have is one that's particularly close to my heart and kind of tied up with me and my childhood, and that is Golden Hand by Garth Nix. So this is actually the fourth instalment to the Old Kingdom series, which had Sabriel, Liriel and Abhorsen. I read all of those when they came out, like when I was really young. I read Sabriel when I was either 6, 7 or 8, I can't exactly remember, but it was the first book I ever read that didn't have pictures. It was my first real kids book, kids novel, instead of you know, like a picture book, and it's been really close to my heart ever since, and I've reread it as an adult and I still think it holds up so well. The language is so elegant that you can read it as a child and you can read it as an adult and you can still get a ton out of it both ways. I've read that series a million times, you know, it's been a big influence on me, and it's probably part of the reason that I'm a writer myself. So when this came out, I didn't know if I was emotionally ready, and I wasn't, but in a kind of good way. A quick blurb: Liriel is now the Abhorsen in waiting. She is training to become the Abhorsen, who is kind of an anti-necromancer, you know, she's the one who keeps the dead down. This magical kingdom, you know, something is brewing, something nasty, and Liriel's kind of drawn in to find out what it is. One of their enemies is rising and planning something big and catastrophic, as they always do. I never knew that this book was coming. I genuinely for years thought that the Old Kingdom series was finished and that was the end of it. It was a trilogy and we were never going to get anything else about those characters. Now to be able to return to them 10 years later after the last book came out, like, it was incredible. It was great. Like, there was times during this book where like I gasped and I like kind of shouted and laughed and cried because it was just amazing to be able to meet those characters again and see them doing new things when they had such a huge effect on me as a kid. Garth Nix also came to Glasgow in November, so I managed to get this book signed, which makes me super happy because I never thought I'd get to meet Garth Nix in my life, and he's one of my favourite authors. So this was a big deal in books for me in 2016. So those are all the books I have for you today. If you've read any of them yourself or would like to read any of them now that I've told you about them, let me know in the comments because I would love to chat about some of the best books of 2016. Quick note for those of you who may be wondering where I am and what I'm working on and why there haven't really been very many videos at all. There will be a link down in the description to a website page of mine which is going to be a what I'm working on page. So you know, I have lots of different priorities. I have writing, I have YouTube, I have a day job or 7 Preptober, figuring out where that goes from here. You might have also heard on Twitter that I'm putting together a writing course, so I have a lot of balls in the air. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. So if you're wondering where I am and what I'm working on, you'll be able to go to that page and see what the deal is if you're interested. As always, I'm Rachael Stephen, novelist, YouTuber, Woodland Hellbitch, and if you want to see more videos like this from me, you can subscribe because that is a good thing to do. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up because it shows YouTube that it's actually kind of good or at least okay. And yeah, bye! Ready Player One? Oh, pal, you can't be doing that now. Preserves. It's gonna be okay. Woo!